there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the almighty Zentaco, and today we are going to be learning how to write a FizzBuzz program in Python. So, many of you out there may be asking, what the heck is a FizzBuzz? And I suppose that's a fair question. So essentially, FizzBuzz is a test. It's an interview question, or at least it was. I don't know if they still use it, but it was designed to filter out people who had any idea of how to program and those who did not. And it's a very simple exercise. So essentially, for FizzBuzz, what you are going to be asked to do is to write a program that is going to print numbers from, let's say, 1 to 100. For multiples of 3, you would print fizz instead of the number. For multiples of 5, you would print buzz. For numbers which are multiples of both, 3 and 5, you would print FizzBuzz. For anything else, you would simply print the number. So this is a pretty good place to get started in Python because it's a rather simple program, and it'll teach you some of the basics, such as how to write a loop and how to write a function. At least in our case, we're going to write a function. Technically, you don't have to. But since you can't spell function without fun, I would say the more functions, the merrier. In all seriousness, though, functions are a great way to sort of organize your thought and your logic flow into coherent, digestible pieces. And they allow you to iterate and change a small portion of your program, which you don't have to go back and change everything. So functions are really nice for, well, they're just really nice. Use functions, guys. If you don't use functions, you're going to be in a funk, essentially. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using the PyCharm IDE, and the reason for that is because it is free, and you can't really beat free. Also, it comes with a built-in linter, so it's going to make sure that you conform to the PEP 8 guidelines of style for your Python. Also, it has autocomplete, which is pretty snazzy. You know, I love a IDE with autocomplete. I don't like typing. You know, I know no one else likes typing. Typing's a hassle. It leads to repetitive stress, injuries, and the clicks agitate your dogs and other animals, probably. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Actually, I love typing. I love the sound my keyboard makes. It's very clicky. Huge fan of my clicky-ass keyboard. Clicking's great. Just love those clicks. But too many clicks and you're going to hurt your wrist, so definitely use autocomplete, guys. I totally recommend that for all new programmers. Stress injuries are common amongst programmers. That and obesity and poor dental hygiene. So brush your teeth. Lay off the pop and Cheetos. Maybe go for a walk once in a while, you lazy bastards. So if you would like to grab a copy of PyCharm, and I can't imagine why you would not, simply go over to JetBrains and click on the download link and you can get started there. Alright, so all that being said, on to our tutorial. Alright, so this is the interactive portion of the video where we see if you little code monkeys can program your way out of a wet paper bag. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here for a short while and play a little ditty, and go ahead and see if you can write your own FizzBuzz program and have it compile without any errors and actually do what it's supposed to do. And if it does, you get a Taco Gold Star, and if it does not, you will be promptly exiled to the deepest, darkest, and coldest regions of this vast and uncaring universe, where you will spend aeons pondering the magnitude of your own complete and eternal failure. So good luck, and try not to think too much about it. Remember, the hallmark of a skilled programmer is to stay cool under pressure, and if all else fails, copy paste Stack Overflow. Good luck. Alright, so hopefully you are all still with us and in the land of the living and not exiled to the darkest regions of the abyss, from which there is no return. Alright, I'm going to get started in PyCharm now, and we're going to get this tutorial underway. By the way, I am whispering because everyone in the house is asleep, and it seems to have turned me into some kind of dime store Bob Ross knockoff. Not really sure how that happened, but I think I'm just going to roll with it, you know? I mean, happy little accidents. So here we are in PyCharm. So what we are looking at right now is a test.py script file. So in Python, .py files are script files. this is our project we were working in. This is actually an old project I was working on, a Discord bot. I was making this about a year and a half ago, and I got pretty far on it, but I kind of just abandoned the project. Like most things I tend to work on, they get abandoned. And what's this? You suck? Oh, it's Bill Murray telling us we suck. I'm not going to disagree, Bill. I think you may be right. So the first thing to keep in mind with Python is that there is no brackets. Everything is done by indentation. So that is how you indicate a code block, is through an indent. So essentially to showcase that, I'm going to show you how to write a basic loop, a for loop. So here's how you write a for loop in Python. So we are writing for I in range 100. Now you want a colon, and anything underneath here, you see how it's been indented. This is going to be looped upon. This is what we're going to do. This is the same for if statements as well. They're all executed with a colon and an indent, and so you essentially show a comment with a hash within Python. And so this is where we will do our loop stuff. Now this loop would actually be run 100 times, but the thing about Python is it tries to avoid off by one errors. It's very consistent with its indexing, and all of Python's indexing is pretty much, as far as I'm aware, going to start at 0. So this will actually run the loop 100 times, but I starts at 0. So if we were to do this, print I, we're going to be printing the index. That's what I is, and it will change every time it iterates, and it's going to start at 0 and go to 99. So it will print 100 times. Let's test that. As you see, it did print up to 99, and it began at 0. Now, there is something interesting you can do with range. You actually can give it 2 arguments, and the first argument will be where you wish to start. The last argument is actually it's where it's going to end, but it is not inclusive, it's exclusive. So for example, 100 would actually start at 1, but being exclusive and not inclusive, it will not include 100, it will simply go to 99. So you'd want that to be 101 for the case of FizzBuzz, because as you recall, FizzBuzz wanted us to count from 1 to 100. Let's test that. Alright, it ended at 100 and it began at 1, so we have succeeded here in our little for loop. Okay, so the next thing we're going to learn here in Python is how to define a function. Now, technically speaking, we don't have to define a function to write our FizzBuzz program, but we're going to, because as I stated earlier, functions are awesome and you should use a function every chance you get, and that's pretty much any time you're programming anything. So if your program does anything more than, I don't know, like writing to the console, you should probably start defining functions. Now here in Python, here is how we define a function. We simply write the word def, that stands for define, followed by the function name, some parentheses with our parameters we're passing into the function, and as I denoted previously, a colon to essentially show where our code block is, followed by an indentation. Everything inside the function will be indented. So this is our function. It's called function. I know that's pretty creative, and we're passing in x and y. Now this is a comment within Python. It's annotated by a hash, and we're just gonna use that to explain what the function does and the function do. So here is where the function do, and the function will do what the function do until that function is either out of code or essentially hits a return. So as soon as a function finds a return, it will return from that function with the data that you have told it to return with. If it finds, well, it will not go any further. Once it sees that first return, that function is done, and it will leave immediately with the data that you have told it to leave with. So for example, we're going to return with x plus y. Now, if I were to have another return, Now, apart from being completely butchered in its spelling, even if I had spelled that properly, that return would never ever see the light of day because we have already seen a return within this function, and we will be leaving immediately with our data. So we can test our function below by using a built-in print function that Python supplies. All print does is prints to the console. In this case, we're going to pass in 10 and 20. Now, if you have I believe a third grade education, or maybe a first, I'm not sure when people learn math anymore, but you should know that this is going to return 30. So let's test that now. And it did in fact return 30. As you noticed, it did not return this here because function never got there, and in fact our IDE is telling us this code is not reachable. It will never be reached. So that is how a function works in its most basic features, but functions are great, and apart from being poorly named, I mean this is in fact a function, but it should probably have been named add because it simply adds. We have learned everything we need to know to get started with our FizzBuzz. So we will now be moving on to Modulus. Alright, so the next thing we're going to need to learn to write our little FizzBuzz program is the concept of Modulus. Now, Modulus is super handy and very neat, and Modulus is denoted by the symbol of the percentage. Now, what Modulus does is it returns the remainder after division. So the way you can explain that is, for example, 9 divided by 4, you can get 4 into 9 twice as 8, but there is 1 remaining. So 9 modulus 4 is 1, because 9 divided by 4 has a whole number of 2. If we were to do the math there, for example, 9 divided by 4 is 2.25. And another way you could think about that is 4 divided by 0.25 is also 1, so that will get us the remainder as well. And the reason you want to use modulus to essentially determine if you are looking at a multiple of a number is because you can do something pretty snazzy, which is to check if a modulus function equals to 0. If it does equal to 0, you know that there is no remainder, so therefore that number is divisible by the modulus. So for example, if we wanted to know if a number was divisible by 3, such as the fizz was supposed to be divisible by 3, we can simply say is I modulo 3 equals 0. If I modulus 3 were to equal 0, we know that the number I is in fact a multiple of 3. Any other number would return a remainder after division, and then that would not be true. So that is the way in which we're going to use modulus. And now that we know what modulus is, you can essentially use it as well. I'll do a little example of it in a program here, in a little function, but you can also use it to essentially stay within boundaries. It's very handy for game programming when you're trying to do like movement on a grid for snapping and stuff like that, because essentially it's like a clock. When it gets to the end, it will start back over at 0. So for example, if you had an index you were counting up to with a modulus 5, you would never reach 5. That would start at 0 and get to 4. Once it hit 5, it would be back at 0. So I will prove that to you right now with a quick little program. So this will iterate from 0 to 9. So we're going to print I modulus 5 and watch what happens. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. As you see, it's just like a clock. Starting at 0, we have our 5 numbers, and once it hits the end, it's back at 0, just like a circle, and that is what makes it super handy and incredibly awesome. Now that we know what modulus is, we pretty much have everything that we need to write our little FizzBuzz program and pass our hypothetical coding test, because when you're trying to get a job as a programmer, they just ask you this one question. So now that you have this, you're going to knock it out of the park and probably be making at least 6 figures within the next few months. So here we go. Moving on to the next step. All right, so here we are at the point where we're actually going to write our FizzBuzz program. So let's go ahead and define our function. We're going to call it FizzBuzz. Now we're going to give this 2 arguments. We're going to pass in, we're going to say range A and range B. Now don't forget, we need to use a colon to denote that this is our logic block. And we're going to say fizzy, fuzzy, buzzy, buzz. That's the what you would call a pretty industry standard explanation of a function. Now the range, all I'm doing here is allowing you to control what range you want for the indexes. I don't know, just seems like something we could add to make it a little more robust, I suppose. So now we use our for loop. Now don't forget, I said you can set the upper and lower boundaries of that for loop. So we're going to pass in range A and range B. Now, so the question we were asked by our the person interviewing us for this job at Google was, can we count from 1 to 100? And when we find a multiple of 3, we need to write fizz. Multiples of 5 are buzz. Multiples of 3 and 5 are FizzBuzz. Everything else, we just need to go ahead and print the index that we're at. So we're going to ask ourselves an if question. If I, can you guess what this is going to be? It's modulus. If I mod 3 equals 0, and I mod 5 equals 0, we're going to do this. Now, why are we doing that? Very simple, because first thing we want to check is FizzBuzz, because FizzBuzz is true if both it is a multiple of 3 and 5. So as we stated previously, anytime using modulus, if something is a multiple, there is obviously going to be no remainder, because the definition of a multiple is that it divides evenly. So this would find out if our index is both divisible by 3 and divisible by 5. If it is, then we're going to do what's inside of this if indentation, and that is simply to print FizzBuzz. Now, I'm not the smartest man in the world, obviously, as you can tell, and so I totally botched my parentheses there, but that's okay. That's why God made copy and paste. So I have fixed it, and now no one will know I'm an idiot apart from you guys watching this video here. So the next thing you want to do then is to use an else statement. Well, in this case, an else if statement. Now, within Python, else if is interesting. It's elif. Elif. It sounds like something written by Tolkien. Perhaps another race of pointy-eared semi-human, I suppose. But so the elif essentially is just else if. So that is an else, but it has a something that needs to be true before it will run. And we're going to find out else if I mod 3 equals 0. So if you recall, that was fizz. So if that's true, we're going to print fizz. And then we're going to have another elif. Those beautiful, elegant elifs. Elif I mod 5 equals 0. Now, as you recall, that is buzz if it's a multiple of 5. Kind of typing at a weird angle so that I can have my face close to the microphone, so it's making this a little difficult. Anyway, so we have an if, elif, elif, and finally we have an else statement, simply because there's nothing else to do. So it was either FizzBuzz, FizzBuzz, or print the index. So if nothing else was true, we're going to go ahead and trigger this else, which is to simply print the index. So how does this work? Let's go over it. So first, we have this if statement. If this if statement is true, we print FizzBuzz. If it's not, then we go down to the next statement and find out if that's true. If this is true, it will be executed. If not, we will step down here and go ahead and execute this. If not, we simply do this. We don't even bother to check any logic because obviously this is the last thing that can happen. And so we're simply going to go ahead and pull the trigger on it because, you know, we've thought this through, we've planned it out, we know what we're doing, and our FizzBuzz is hypothetically finished unless we made a mistake. And if we did, don't forget we will be banished to the nether regions of eternal damnation. So let's hopefully make sure we got this right. So let's go ahead and test it with, well, print, so we don't need to print anything. We're just going to run it. So you run a function by putting the name of the function, and then you pass in the needed parameters, in this case range A and B. So we wanted to start at 1, and don't forget that our range on the range function is not inclusive. Now hopefully we are correct. Let's test. One, two, fizz. Fizz, is that this is the third index. Is that divisible by 3? Why, yes, I do believe that is true. 4, and then 5, is 5 divisible by 5? Obviously so. Is 6 divisible by 3? Yes, clearly. 7, 8, 9, is 9 divisible by 3? It sure is. And we have a fizz here. Oh, look, at 10 we have a buzz because 10 is divisible by 5. 11, 12, we have a fizz. Now, if you notice, we have a 15. Here's our first FizzBuzz, and that is both a multiple of 5 and 3. So we are excellent there. And if we were to go ahead and read all 100 entries, we would see that we are correct, and we have passed our code exam, and we now work for Google, helping to essentially enslave humanity. So good job, ladies and gentlemen. You have hopefully succeeded. Hopefully you came up with the same solution I did. Now, to be honest with you, there are other ways to write FizzBuzz, other stupider ways, which may be interesting to some people, but I will not write any of them here. You can come up with some sort of crazy, interesting way to write a FizzBuzz, in which case feel free to go ahead and comment down below with a link to your crazy, zany FizzBuzz program that, you know, breaks all of expectations. But this is a rather sensible and easy way to write a FizzBuzz. There are probably better ways to do it. I am actually not that great at programming, to be honest with you, but I do quite enjoy it. Alright, well, I want to thank everyone for watching this video. I'm sorry about the way that I decided to film it. I do sound quite ridiculous in this one, but we'll see if maybe next time I have a new persona for you guys. Alright guys, so in all seriousness, thank you for watching this video. I've been wanting to make a Python video for a while just because I think Python is a nice introductory language to getting serious with real programming. And I haven't really done any Python in quite a while, but you know, it's such a simple language, it's easy to remember. As I said though, I'm actually not a fan of the fact that there are no brackets. I know it's silly, but I just like my code blocks to have brackets. But otherwise, Python is sensible, it's easy to read and understand. It does a really good job of helping you with indexing, so everything's very sensible about Python. I'm a huge fan of it. And like for loops are essentially a breeze. They're black magic. It's very easy to iterate over lists and arrays and stuff like that. Like it's just a really user-friendly programming language. The downside to Python is it's actually not all that fast when you're actually doing some serious calculations. So in which case you may want to move to something a little more robust, perhaps C# or C, though I would never recommend anyone use C unless they wanted to shortly commit suicide. So, alright guys, thanks again for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.